What's up, everybody? My name is Brad and welcome back to the channel. Today is Monday and it also happens to be Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there watching. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different than I normally do. I wanted to do something sort of theme related towards the holiday of Valentine, something about love kind of thing. And I was thinking about it. I don't really read romance books. I don't care for romance books. I don't read space erotica. I don't read your typical happy-go-lucky kind of stories, your uplifting, feel-good stories. So what kind of books can I talk about that sort of go along with the theme of Valentine's Day? And so I'm sort of doing the opposite of the love stuff. I'm going to do heartbreaking books. You know, all your books that make your heart break, your chest hurt, you're devastated, all that kind of stuff. Those are the books I'm going to talk about today. And these aren't necessarily my top 5 heartbreaking books. These are just the first 5 books that came to mind when thinking about books that broke my heart when I read them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. These are not going to be in any particular order, but these are 5 of my most heartbreaking books that I have ever read. So first up on the list is Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This is a thin little novella, but it packs a big wallop of a punch. And this one's all about parenthood, specifically motherhood, and dealing with the grief that comes with the loss of a child. And it doesn't matter if it's an infant child or, like the case in this book, if it's an adult child, just how emotionally devastating that is as a parent. I'm not a mother, but I am a father, and I still felt that connection with our main character and what she was sort of going through, how I think I would feel losing a child. It's so emotional and just gut-wrenching, and you really go through the main character's sort of mental state, the depression that she's in, and the grief that she's going through, and the things she would be willing to do. She would be willing to sacrifice anything to have just another minute spent with her child that she misses so much. It really hit me on an emotional level. Like I said, as a parent, thinking about losing a child would just be the absolute most horrible thing in the world. As a parent, your goal should be to protect your children at all costs and do anything to keep them safe. And you can't always do that, especially when they've grown up and gone on their own way. And just the utter loss and sort of just, you don't know what to do if you were to be in that situation. Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. It's emotionally charged. It's a gut punch. It's a fantastic read. I highly suggest you check it out. Up first is Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. Up next is The Listener by Robert McCammon. And this was actually my first Robert McCammon read, even though it's one of his more recent releases. But I don't think I could have picked a better book to start out with his work. Sort of a running theme with this entire video. This book was heartbreaking. It was devastating, especially the end of the book. The end of the book is what really got to me. This book takes place in like the 1930s or so down in New Orleans. And our main character, his name is Curtis. He's an African-American teenager, I believe, a younger man. And he has this sort of ability. He's able to listen, almost like reading your mind, reading your thoughts. And doing that, he's able to sort of squash beef between friends and things like that. These squabbles they might have, he can hear their thoughts and hear their feelings and sort of come to a mutual agreement, bring the friends to a mutual agreement with each other. So he's sort of known for that. And one time he starts to hear these sort of cries for help, these thoughts about this girl. He doesn't know who she is. He doesn't know where she's at or anything like that. It's almost just like these signals, these messages are coming to him from this girl. They're able to sort of communicate, I guess telepathically, you could say, in a way. And then his life sort of gets entwined and intertwines with this young girl. And the ending was just so sad. It was beautifully written. I love Robert McCammon's writing. I think the writing really played into it. You get attached to the character of Curtis and the girl that he's trying to help out. And just the sort of sacrifices that are made along the way, and just the language involved and the way it's written at the end. It was beautiful, and it was heartbreaking. It made me cry at the end of the book. A fantastic story. The whole book was great, but the ending is really what gut punched me, made me, break my heart, so to speak. But up next is The Listener by Robert McCammon. Next on the list is Songbirds and Stray Dogs by Meagan Lucas. This is a Southern grit lit type of story. And what makes this one so heartbreaking is because of Meagan's writing, you become so emotionally attached to these characters in this book. You care for them, you sympathize for them, you empathize with them. You just want good things to happen to these characters. You've got Jolene. She's a young woman, maybe like 19, 20 years old. Her father's not in the picture. Her mother sort of drops her off on the doorstep of her aunt, She gets pregnant. The baby daddy leaves the picture. The aunt kicks her to the curb. And Jolene literally has no one. She's pregnant. She has no one. She doesn't really know where to go or what she can do to survive. And then we have Cash and Chuck. And Chuck sort of takes her in, takes her under her wing, and they sort of become this almost adoptive family to each other. They've all had their own struggles, their own sort of rough go of it in their own separate ways. And you just want the best things to happen to this group of people that have come together, that are sort of leaning on each other, this makeshift family. And of course, that's not what happens. Good things do not happen. This book really made me mad at one point. There's a character in here that might be one of my most hated characters of all time. Again, because of how well the writing was and how attached you become to these characters. I was just really pissed off. I remember I read the certain part. I messaged Meagan and told her how mad it made me. And she just like laughed at me, sent me a smiley face back. But yeah, there's a certain point in this book, it just is devastating. It breaks your heart. And you just want to reach through the page and just choke a character to death because they made you so mad. But next up on the list, fantastic book. Highly recommend it. Meagan's great. She's become a friend of myself and Jay on Paper Cuts. Fantastic book. Everyone that I've recommended this book to who has read it has just absolutely loved it. But next up on the list, it's Songbirds and Stray Dogs by Meagan Lucas. Up next is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. And this whole book, the subject matter is sad from beginning to end. We're dealing with a boys' reform school in Florida during the Jim Crow era. And it's actually based on a real school in Florida that was actually still in operation up until like 2007 or so. I think it was in operation for like 100 something years, but still that recently up to 2007. And still these abusive, torturous practices were still going on up until that point, it seems like. This takes place in like the 1960s in the Jim Crow era South. And our main character, he sort of gets unfairly sentenced to this juvenile reform school for boys. And he shouldn't be there. He's a good kid. He's really smart. And he's not supposed to be here. And that's sad in and of itself. And then, everything that goes into it, all the trauma they go through, the torture, the abuse, everything that they go through at the reform school, beaten, all that kind of stuff. It's all sad. But then we get near the end and there's just this absolute hammer blow that just knocked me completely on my butt. I did not see it coming. I don't want to say it's a twist, but it kind of is a twist. But it was something that I did not see coming, and it just emotionally rocked me. I did not see it coming, like I said, whatsoever. And I don't think I've ever been maybe more upset in a book than I was with this one at that particular moment in time in the book. I don't really know what else to say about it. The whole book is gripping. It's a fascinating read. Especially knowing that it is based on true events. After I read the book, I looked up articles and things about the real school. There's like some testimonies from people who went there, who survived it, sort of their testimonies that are out there on the internet. But it was such a gripping read, and just Colson Whitehead, he just reached in and just absolutely crushes your heart with this one at a certain point. But this one is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. And the final book for today's video for most heartbreaking reads is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. I've talked about this book quite a lot on the channel throughout different videos, and I've sort of likened it to a beautiful atrocity. It's this beautiful, lyrical, gorgeous prose that's talking about these horrible, sad, heartbreaking events. It's all about Betty, which is actually Tiffany McDaniel's mother, and her real life situations that she went through. I think some of it is made up fictional for the book's sake. I think a lot of it really did happen to Betty. And if you can think of a trigger warning, this book probably has it. There's racism, there's sexual assault, there's rape, there's animal abuse, there's all kinds of things going on in this book. And it's about Betty and her family and just the things that they go through. And it's like this family, they cannot catch a break. It's one tragedy, and as soon as they sort of get over that one tragedy, another tragedy rears its ugly head. And just this ongoing, just sort of domino effect of just bad luck, bad luck, bad luck, bad luck, just on and on. It's almost like this family is kind of cursed. They just cannot catch a break, like I said. There's heartbreaking moments throughout, but there was one in particular that I think was more heartbreaking for me than any of the other ones because it was so innocent. There was no malevolence towards it. There was no ill intent going on. It was just like this freak accident that happens. But it was devastating. It was heartbreaking. and you care for the characters, you're sad, but then you get the characters' reactions to what's going on, and that just makes it all the worse. And again, like Betty, you just want good things to happen to her and her family and her siblings, but they just don't. It's just, like I said, it's tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. It's almost like you can't catch your breath before another bad thing happens to this family. But it's beautiful. It's some of the most beautiful writing I have ever read, with the saddest subject matter to go along with that. Breathtaking book. Absolutely recommend it. So final book on the list for today is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. And that's it. Those have been 5 of my most heartbreaking books that I have ever read. All of these books were 5-star reads for me. I highly suggest and recommend you check out each and every one of them, especially if you want to wallow in your sorrows for a little bit, or maybe read about some people whose lives are not as well off as yours. Maybe your life isn't as bad as it seems to be when you're reading about these other characters. But for me, if an author can elicit that emotional response, that physical emotional response of wanting to cry or crying in a book, you're so attached to a character that it just brings that emotional response out of you, then I think that's sort of the peak, the pinnacle of writing for an author, through their words, to elicit that emotional response from a reader. And all these books did that for me to varying degrees. Like I said, I highly suggest all of them. Definitely check them out. But if you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. Did they break your heart like they broke mine? If you have any heartbreaking reads that you'd like to recommend, let me know down in the comments as well. That's all I have for you guys today. So thank you for spending your time with me. Again, my name is Brad, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.